Hello everyone. I'm Pastor Katie Emery, and I'm one of the pastors at First Lutheran Church in Longmont, Colorado. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery as we dive deeper into some of the major religions of the world. Today we're going to explore the religion or philosophy of Buddhism. In much of the Western world, we have a tendency to assume that Buddhism is one thing, one religion, one way of life. However, there are quite a few sects of Buddhism that believe different things and practice different things, spread across every continent except Antarctica. Yet despite the differences between those sects, as with Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, they all do share some core tenets, which qualify them all as Buddhism. Before we dive too deeply into those things, there are a few things that it might be helpful for you to know. First of all, you need to know that Buddhism grew out of the religion or ritual and practice of Hinduism. So they share a lot of words and philosophies and rituals. You'll see a lot of overlap there. And the second thing is that the term Buddha, which can be a title as well, and that's what Buddhism was named after, means enlightened one. This could mean any sort of wise being or human, but most commonly when one speaks of the Buddha, they're referring to a very specific person. Siddhartha Gautama, the founder of the philosophy or religion of Buddhism. Here's a little backstory on him. Siddhartha Gautama was born around 566 BC, so a long time before Jesus. He was born into a rich Hindu family, which belonged to the warrior caste, which is one of the more well-respected and higher castes in India. As such, he lived a pretty sheltered and privileged life. Part of this was because of his caste. He was treated well, he had all the good things, he lived sort of in a gated community. But part of the reason that he was sheltered was because of a dream his mother had while she was pregnant with him, stating that her son would be a king, but that he would give up his kingdom if he ever came in contact with human suffering. Well, of course his mother wanted what was best for him, and she really didn't want her son to give up his dharma, as he learned in Hinduism, his duty. So she did everything in her power to keep him from witnessing anything painful in his life, including death, suffering, sickness, or any other misery, because she didn't want him to leave, and she didn't want him to continue to be reincarnated either. Unfortunately for her, parents cannot shelter their children forever. And as the story goes, on 4 consecutive days, Siddhartha went out of the palace in his chariot with his chariot driver, and he had 3 encounters of suffering: death, sickness, illness, disease. And he also had 1 encounter with a monk, or a holy man, who seemed to be at peace, even in the face of this suffering and sickness. And he wanted that. He wanted to be at peace. These encounters caused him to renounce his throne and his kingdom, and spend his life as a monk, for a while surviving only on the goodness and generosity of others, and seeking enlightenment, seeking what that man that he had seen on the side of the road at peace had. Sounds tempting, doesn't it? Well, it sure was for him, enough to give up all of his riches. After this change in lifestyle, which is called the Great Renunciation, Siddhartha plunged deeply into a life of extreme self-denial, going weeks without eating or drinking, just hoping to reach the peace and enlightenment he had witnessed in that monk on the road. And finally, at the age of 35, he did. From that point on, he was known as Buddha Gautama, or most times just the Buddha. So committed was he to teaching others about the importance of enlightenment that he began to give sermons about it to his friends, much like your pastor might give sermons about various things. Those friends went on to form what is known as a sangha, or a group of monks, sort of like you might find in a monastery. And from there, the movement that became the religion of Buddhism shifted and grew and branched out in a variety of different ways and took on a variety of iterations. However, as I mentioned before, there are a few things that hold Buddhism together, even with those different sections. One of these things is a centrality of what is known as the Four Noble Truths. These are a progressive list of sayings that frame all of life in this world for all humanity. The first truth is all of life is suffering. Pretty bleak, isn't it? The truth behind the truth, though, is that humans throughout all of existence have been seeking to fulfill something, seeking to fill an emptiness or our unfilled desires. So we're always suffering in that we're never fully satisfied. We're always wanting more. In fact, this flows right into the second noble truth, which is suffering is caused by desire. The more we become attached to things in this world, the more we want to be attached and have more and get more and work for more. We chase contentment, trying our hardest to end the suffering of discontentment. We only grow deeper into that suffering. However, as the third noble truth states, if you end desire, you will end suffering. It is from this truth that comes the concept that the Buddha and the Buddhists even now refer to as the middle way. That is, to live one's life in a way that is not too self-sacrificing, so that your basic needs are met, but also not too prosperously, so that your life is focused on acquiring the most things possible, the most anything possible. Live your life in a way of contentment without striving. Now, Buddha knew all about the dangers of both sides of the spectrum. He had lived a life of extravagance. He had also lived a life of extreme self-denial and self-sacrifice. Neither one caused him to reach enlightenment. It was finding contentment in the place he was that brought him to enlightenment. Which brings us then to the fourth noble truth. The way that you achieve enlightenment and the end of desire is to follow something that is called the Eightfold Path, which is another one of the things that Buddhism's various different sects have in common. This path is a series of moral, spiritual, and mental exercises or practices that keep desires at bay and keep the self under control. These 8 practices are right view, right aspiration or thought, right speech, right conduct or action, right livelihood or occupation, right endeavor or effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration or meditation. You can read more about this Eightfold Path and what each one of those things means in the resource materials that are attached to this video. Like the 10 Commandments in our own faith, the Eightfold Path is meant to be done all at once. It isn't progressive the way that the Four Noble Truths are. You must always practice speaking kindly and being attentive to this present moment, in the same way that in Judaism or Christianity, we must always practice not killing other people and not worshiping other gods. You don't do one or the other, and one doesn't really flow out of the other. Hopefully, in Buddhism, if you follow the Eightfold Path perfectly, the devotee will reach a state of nirvana or enlightenment. The concept of nirvana differs depending on which sect of Buddhism is referring to it. For some, it is depicted as a sort of other world or heaven, outside of this world of hardship or suffering. For other schools of Buddhism, it is more like a state of highest consciousness, where all things become clear and all things are understood. Still others believe that nirvana is an eternal state, but rather, or is not an eternal state, but rather that through right practices and meditation, you can achieve moments of nirvana or enlightenment. As you may know, meditation has been an important part of many, but not all, Buddhist sects. Considering that is one of the central goals of Buddhism is to let go of attachment to this world and decrease desire, this is not surprising. The act of meditating, opening up the mind and letting go of thoughts and impulses of the mind and body, has been proven scientifically to cause physical relief. Meditation reduces blood pressure, lessens stress, and calms emotions that can become overwhelming and distracting. In short, meditation helps people to center themselves and to come back to being grounded in the body. Many Christians also practice meditation for this very reason. Though our concept of why we should do it is a little different, the benefits are just as profound for us, if we can sit still long enough to do it. Some Buddhist sects recognize this struggle of sitting still, which is one of the reasons that they also place a strong emphasis on mindfulness in their life and practice. That is, to be present with whatever is going on in this moment where we are. This is a spiritual practice that Christians do as well. Anything we can do to increase our spiritual wellness, washing dishes, taking a shower, going on a walk, gardening. If we are fully present with whatever we are doing, that is practicing mindfulness. Anything can become a spiritual experience. Perhaps more than any of the other religions we've talked about in this course, Buddhism is grounded in the day-to-day life that we live. Not all Buddhists go to a temple. Few Buddhists have a worship service in the way we would think about it. Sacred texts are not usually central to what they do. The practice of Buddhism is about living a life that is free of desire and free of suffering, not oppressing and not striving for more. All are equal, and all are on their own path. It is a religion of respect and deep spiritual grounding. And if you do all of these things, maybe you'll escape this world. Maybe you'll reach nirvana. Maybe you won't need to be born again. I hope this lecture has given you a little respect for Buddhism. Go ahead and read more about it. It's very interesting. Thanks for exploring this little piece of Buddhism with me. Take care, everyone.